What I'm going to talk about today is permitted development rights. Now, with auctions, when you buy a property at auction, the power of the auction transaction is certainty. The hammer goes down, you've exchanged contracts, and in 28 days' time, completion happens. And I think permitted development rights go hand in hand with the whole auction approach to certainty, because permitted development takes away the vagaries of planning permission. With planning permission, there's always uncertainty. You don't know what you're going to get, you don't know what you're going to get permission for. With permitted development rights, these are given to you by the Parliament in central London, and these are rights that allow you to develop a property in certain ways. If you know what you can and can't do under permitted development rights, then you know what you can do with the property that you're buying at auction. The more you can do under permitted development rights in order to expand the envelope of the property or develop a property or change its use without having to seek planning permission means that you can get your deal done and dusted quickly and therefore get your money out of the deal and move on to the next thing. So that's why permitted development, I feel, and an understanding of it goes hand in hand with a sort of auction approach. Okay, a little bit about me. My name's Ranjan Bhattacharya. I've been investing in property now since 1990. I bought my first property in 1990. I've been buying property in every year since then. I've been buying, I'm not really a seller at auctions, I'm a buyer. I've been buying property from auctions for the last 15 years, and I find it an excellent source of value in that most of the properties I end up buying at auction, I develop, I add value to. And one of the key ways of adding value to properties is by knowing what the permitted development rights are and exploiting them. So I've been doing auctions now for 15 years. We always buy 2 or 3 properties a year at auction minimum, and they've all got development potential, which we look to redevelop in order to let out and run a portfolio of properties in North and Northwest London. I also host the Baker Street Property Meet, which is the largest property investors networking meeting in the M25 area. We have 200 people coming each month, and it's quite a unique place to meet other property investors. Okay, so let's look at permitted development rights then. Now, I think permitted development rights allow you to, it's important to know what you can do without bothering those guys at the council. Those guys at the council are very busy, and you don't really want to bother them with a planning application and deal with the vagaries of whether or not you're going to get it. Permitted development is what you can do by law. There are all sorts of things you can do. You can do loft conversions. You can build dormers at the back of a property. You can do ground floor extensions. You can also do 2-story extensions. There are also things that you can do to commercial premises. If you buy shops and things, you can extend into the yard up to a total of 100 square meters without necessarily applying for planning permission. Obviously there's office to residential conversions and the like, which there's a lot of buzz going around at the moment. But what I'm going to focus today is what you can do with residential properties. So the things you can do to residential properties without the need for asking for planning permission. Now, the key thing to check is that you actually have permitted development rights. Although permitted development rights are given by Westminster Parliament, they're not given by your local authority. Your local authority has the power to take them away. Now, the permitted development rights only exist for houses. You don't get them for flats. So if you've got a flat, then everything you want to do to a flat, you need planning permission for. You don't get them in conservation areas and if it's a listed building. So if you're looking at an auction lot, for example, it's very important to look at the legal pack and look at the local authority search document, because the local authority search will tell you whether the property is in a conservation area or it's listed. if those two apply, then you do not have permitted development rights on that property. Now, there are some areas where councils are just completely against anything, and they issue things called Article 4 directions, which take away permitted development rights given to you by Westminster. And it's always important to look on your council's website for the postcode that you're looking at, whether those PD rights have been taken away by an Article 4 direction. So why do it is that, I mean, I'm always keen to exploit as much as I can from permitted development because it's immediate, I know. As soon as the hammer goes down, if I've got PD rights, then I can do certain things to a property without asking anyone's permission. All I need to get is building regulations approval. Now, building regulations approval is never a problem because planning is about the council having authority over what you build. Building regulations is about just how you're going to build it, how you're going to build it and what regulations you're going to follow. So that's always relatively easy to comply with. So what I'm going to take you through is what you can do to single-storey properties. So if you're looking at a property and it's a freehold house, I'm going to explain what you can do in terms of single-storey extensions, what you can do in terms of double-storey extensions, and what you can do in terms of loft conversions without having to bother those people in the planning department to seek permission beforehand. So, single-storey extensions then. Generally, you can build out to the back as long as you don't cover more than 50% of the total garden space, front and back of the property. Now that's important because a lot of people don't count the front garden as part of their 50% maximum that they're allowed to build out on. You're not allowed to build extensions on the front of the house, so it's specifically for rear of the house. And also, you get more of a right to build. You can build more on a detached house than you can do on an attached house. This picture kind of shows it quite well. Generally, a single-storey extension can't be more than 4 meters high at the maximum point of the roof. You can go up to 3 meters out on an attached property, 4 meters out on a detached property, provided you stay 7 meters away from the rear boundary. And that's an extension you can do without any planning permission whatsoever. There are similar rights for side extensions. And again, generally speaking, with a side extension, you're allowed to go build on the side, provided you stay a little bit away from the border, up to half the width of the original house. And again, I've got a nice little picture that shows what you can do. If you've got space on the side of the house, you can build, you can go to the side up to 50% of the original width of the house. So that's quite a nice little thing that you can do. Now, a couple of traps people fall under is this, because a lot of Victorian properties in London have these L-shaped little rear additions. I'm sure everyone has seen this sort of house design. Now, when they say you're allowed to extend 3 meters from the rear wall, they mean 3 meters from the rear wall. So what that means is if your original house line is L-shaped, then that's what you're going to end up with. That's what you can do under permitted development. To make it like the one in the picture on the left, you would have to get planning permission for. So that is a little trap that a lot of people, I've seen so many people end up building the one on the left, and if the council is particularly mad, then they can come and get you for that. There is an interesting little offer, if you like, by the government, which says that until 2019, these allowances for single-storey extensions are doubled. It's a slightly different process, though. Whereas with permitted development, you can just do the work straight away. with this doubling allowance thing, it's under what they call a prior notice. So you've got the right to do it, but you've got to notify the council and your neighbours that you're going to exercise this right. You have to wait 40 days or so, and then you can build it. But that can be very, very powerful because it literally doubles what you can do. In a terraced house, instead of 3 meters, you can go back 6 meters. In a detached house, you can go back 8 meters instead of 4 meters. I mean, this is all great because generally what I've found is depending on the location, if you can add square footage to a property, you add to the end value of the place. And then there's double-story extensions. With double-story extensions, again, you're not allowed to go higher than the height of the main roof, but the best thing to do is kind of show you a picture. You're subject to the 3-meter rule. With double-story, you've got to be 2 meters from the boundary and 7 meters from the end wall. A lot of people find that the double-story is much harder to do under permitted development because of the site restrictions, and that's something that you may find. And finally, I want to talk about lofts and what you can do with lofts. And lofts is absolutely great. You can't build dormers to the front, facing the highway, but what you can do is dormers to the rear. Now, what they say is that there is a maximum of cubic meters of extra space that you create when you create a loft. But you've got to remember what that extra space is. The extra space is the cubic meterage of the dormer, because what's already in the original roof, you've already got. You're not creating extra space, yeah? So the extra space you're actually creating is the triangle dormer, and rarely do you get beyond 40 cubic meters, even if you extend to the max. There are very, very few restrictions on this one. You could do really massive dormers to the rear, provided they're just 20 centimeters inset from the rear wall. So you can pretty much go the full width of a house, which you will never get under planning permission. When you try for dormers under planning permission, they normally ask them to be very subservient to the roof. So you can normally do a lot more. Here's some great examples of what you can do with lofts. By the way, lofts, I should say, are one of the cheapest forms of adding space you can do. I mean, generally, because the building's already there, it's just a bit of carpentry. In terms of building costs, lofts are the cheapest. Ground floor extensions are the next most expensive way of adding space. Then there's 2-story extensions, and then finally basements. But lofts are the cheapest per square foot you can get extra space for in a building. But all these things are permittable under permitted development, because you can go to the rear of a house, and you can see on these dog-legged type, Victorian type of properties, you can even extend the L-shaped bit, because the extension is not going as high as the original roof line. Now, obviously, unlike this picture, it might help to shove in some windows, but that's just for illustrative purposes. The other thing that people don't realise is that as long as you're not in a conservation area, if you've got these gable-ended houses, now I don't know how this is possible because I think it is ugly, but look, you can do it, and if you can get the extra space, why not? But you can take these hipped-end semis and make them gable-ended for maximum space, even though it doesn't match the neighbour's property. And you can do that outside of conservation areas without any planning permission at all. So that's a very powerful little thing there.